All right. So welcome again. Welcome to Agile DevOps TFW. A little bit about our meetup. We started this meetup about what, 6 years ago, more than 6 years ago. That's when the San Francisco Giants, or who knows, I know nothing about baseball. Whatever team this is, they won the World Series. I'm not a baseball fan. I still can't understand baseball. I try to compare it to cricket. So anyway, 2014 October, two of my friends, Victor and Fred, we got together in this Barnes & Noble in Dallas. We co-founded Agile DevOps TFW. We try to explore topics at the intersection of Agile and DevOps. We meet on the first Thursday of the month. That's this time slot, 6 p.m. Central. And we've recently started adding another slot, which is the third Thursday of the month, 11 Central. We alternate Agile and DevOps topics. And I would love to get more speakers especially on DevOps topics. So if you know someone or if you want to speak, give me a shout. We'll get you scheduled. In case you miss any of our live sessions and you want to look at the recordings, then the recordings are always available on our Smooth Apps YouTube channel. We've created a playlist for our webinars, so you can always check out the content offline, right? A little bit about my company, Smooth Apps. We are a team of Agile training, coaching, consulting partners. We've got partners throughout the world. All our partners are Scrum.org professional Scrum trainers, which means they have been interviewed, trained, selected either by Ken Schwaber himself or by people that he has trusted, right? What kind of offerings do we have? So for Smooth Apps, this is just a glimpse of some of the offerings that we provide. We provide agility assessments. We provide Agile leadership enablement, leadership training, coaching, consulting, Agile for executives, and executive coaching. We've got one of our most popular products is the Product Owner Bootcamp. We teach product owners how to manage and optimize return of investment. We help launch or reboot Scrum teams and Agile teams. And then we offer like a complete Agile transformation service, soup to nuts, all aspects of your Agile enablement. So that's just a little bit of what we do. If you don't have money, that's okay. We've got a bunch of free resources. We've got free blogs. We've got lots of free content on YouTube. We recently published Intro to Agile for Executives. So it's a 15-minute video. Like the Geico commercial, 15 minutes could save 15% on your Agile transformation. So show it to your executives. Usually executives are super busy. They don't always have the right idea about Agile, but maybe if they watch that video, maybe they'll get a quick overview. We've got a bunch of presentations and webinars like this one on our channel. And of course, we'd love to have you and your friends and colleagues join us at the meetup. And subscribe to our LinkedIn page because we post a lot of thought-provoking articles, tips of the day, and so on, good content on LinkedIn. So you can follow us on LinkedIn. A little bit of logistics. So logistics, this session, you will be in listen-only mode, and you can interact through the Q&A panel, through the chat panel. I'll be monitoring both of these panels. We will tackle questions either along the way, where appropriate, I will interject, and Amresh will also be pausing and asking me for questions along the way. Some questions we might reserve for the end of the session. And if we run out of time and you still have questions that are unanswered, then you can always connect with Amresh offline on LinkedIn. And then he might be able to spend some time answering your questions offline. All right. So with that, I want to introduce you to Amresh. So Amresh and I go way back. We studied together in college, and Amresh recently helped with the digital transformation at Samsung, and he's had tremendous variety of expertise in different sectors and different roles in different industries and companies. So with that, I want you to welcome Amresh. And Amresh, I would stop sharing. Can you start sharing and then tell us anything else that you feel that you would like us to know about you? All right. So Amresh, over to you.
Hi Ravi, are you able to hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see your screen.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, first of all, thanks for the introduction and giving me this opportunity to speak at Smooth Apps. And then, like Ravi said, Ravi and I go way back to almost more than 2 decades, and I'm like super excited and very thrilled to have him as a friend, colleague, and also a guiding factor throughout my career. So with this, I want to also quickly give a little background about myself. Like Ravi said, most recently I've been with Samsung. At Samsung, essentially my job role was a digital transformation executive. As an executive, my I was particularly focused on creating an opportunity or a direct to consumer business for Samsung, which is essentially e-commerce. And from a product perspective, program perspective, as well as from a platform perspective, we were able to grow a business, engage with the customers, and reach it to a multi-million dollar industry that it is today. It's a very exciting thing. And as you all know, especially during these COVID times, e-commerce is one channel that has been aggressively sought, and and especially with all the user experience that Touchpoint provides. So prior to Samsung, I was a business and a technology consultant with Infosys. My essential role there was to help uh, organizations digitally transform them across various channels, as well as get all the technology that is needed to connect the consumers to the brand. So that's a little bit about myself, and yeah, I'm looking forward to having a chat with all the participants. Yeah. So yeah, let's quickly deep dive into today's area. So today I'm here to speak about outpacing the COVID crisis with digital transformation, and the focus for today's discussion is what are the 4 steps that will help anybody to emerge stronger during the crisis, because there, as you know, a lot of businesses have been hit. Okay? Let's start with the basics. Okay? For people who are new to digital transformation, and very few industries are actually still new to this term, essentially, what is digital transformation? Let's just take a step back before we kind of deep dive into the 4 pillars. So for me, it's very simple. Digital transformation, it's an investment of ideas and behaviors to transform the way the work is done. And the way we transform this is through using technology, which will make the whole process faster and better. That, in a simple term, is digital transformation. For all those who probably just coming fresh out today, watching, let's say, this elections on CNN, you look at it this way. You're able to see data on a channel. Let's say you're watching it on Twitter, or reading it in the newspapers, or you are reaching it through the TV, watching it through the TV. That's a channel. So those are the tools through essentially which you are able to see. The process is the election itself, the whole thing that happened at the back end, and the people are all the people that who essentially are a part of this process. So it's a combination of tools, process, and people to essentially radically get these new ideas and behaviors and transform the way work is done. So with that background, I'd like to quickly get into what are the pillars of digital transformation before we go into the steps that are needed to support ourselves during the crisis. So at a very high level, there are 5 pillars on which the whole digital transformation is built on. The first is obviously you need to come up with a business strategy, saying that this is what I want to do. Uh, in my example, it was setting up a direct to consumer business for e commerce, which is for Samsung. Then the second thing is essentially engaging the customers. You come up with a business idea, then you identify for whom you would like to engage it. Who is this business for? Who are the customer engagement channels? And then to accomplish these change and implement the strategy, you need to get a fundamental shift in the culture through innovation across the organizations. It could be a small change, it could be a small organization, it could be a mid-sized organization, but the significance is for you to imply that strategy, implement the technology tools that are needed, and last but not the least, everything these days is kind of data driven. So the 5 pillars are strategy, customer engagement, culture, innovation, technology, followed by the last one, which is data and analytics, which is like the Holy Grail. Those are the pillars. At this time, before I get to the next slide, if are there any questions? Okay, good. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So we talked at a high level what those 5 pillars are. I talked about business strategy, which is essentially what you want to do, customer engagement, which are the channels. It could be web, mobile, TV, email, touch points, physical, retail, online, offline. Then I talked about the culture, which is, are we commerce driven? Are we people driven? Are we services based? Are we collaborative? Are we open? Are we transparent? Whatever is the culture, that's what it talks about. The fourth one we talked about was digital technologies, which is essentially whether it's cloud, whether it's IoT, 3D printing, sensors, what have you. All those things essentially constitute technology. But last but not the least is the data and the science, which is essentially how do I predict what the customer's next behavior is? What is the customer? What's the persona of the customer? Yeah. With that, so that is essentially what is digital transformation, what are the technologies that are there for digital transformation, what are the building blocks of digital transformation. So this is how the regular world was operating. And then came the COVID crisis. So that became the new normal for us. So that basically made CEO back on the driver's seat, because the CEO is the one who's brokering across the CIOs, CTOs, CFOs, CHROs, security officers, CISOs. All these people essentially came to the front. But the two people who are really at the forefront of the whole digital transformation are the CIOs and the CTOs. They essentially have to accelerate this digital strategy and work at the pace at which the crisis is evolving. And if you see, what does the crisis, so as we talked about the transformation, we talked about the pillars of transformation. We now understand that those pillars, we are now evolved from the normal times to the time of crisis, which is essentially the COVID pandemic. What does it mean for a person to, let's say, uh, stand up during these COVID times? You know, with due respect, yes, it's a human tragedy for everybody. So at this time, it requires every person to essentially be bold, and not just be bold and take all those decisive decisions. They have to have the ability to quickly learn on their feet. So the two fundamental things, even before we get into the details of the pillars, are be bold, because that's what you need to survive in this. And then second is quickly adapt and learn. And the next slide basically talks about what do I mean by being bold. You know, when I say bold, I'm not talking about just putting some cosmetic changes on. Let's say every organization has some digital capabilities, just coming, putting a lipstick on and saying that, okay, I have improved X number of changes on the website. That's not what I'm talking about. Being bold basically means you create a new offering. In my example, I essentially went and created a new direct to consumer business for a giant at a global scale. That is being bold means. Then evolving the business portfolio. So today I'm on web. Do I need to get onto app? Do I need to get onto push notification? What other channels do I need to? Do I need to get into a different category? How do I outsmart the competition? How do I evolve my business portfolio? Okay? So that is being bold. Then the last but not the least is, like I said, we need to be very quick and learn to work at the speed of this crisis. This crisis, we talked about wave one. Now we are already in the middle of a wave two pandemic. We had the highest record number of cases yesterday across America. So what have we learned from wave one that will help us in wave two? Have we identified the elements? Have we focused on technologies? Did we keep a fundamental, keep the lights on technology? Or did we all, even though we were remote, were we able to uh, work together as a team or not? These are some of the things that we are fortunate enough to kind of learn from wave one. So that brings me into the next set. Okay? And I want to just quickly take a pause to see if there are any questions. If not, we'll continue. Okay.
All right. Amresh, let me see. Does anyone have any questions? We've covered a lot of ground so far. We got a quick overview of what is digital transformation, what are the 5 pillars of digital transformation, and then what are the 2 things we need to do in the face of the COVID crisis, which is being bold and learning at the speed of the crisis. What questions? Okay, so Adrian has a question. How do you validate your learning to ensure that you are on the right track? So Amresh, I noticed that one of your bullet points on learning was test and learn. Do you have any examples from either your experience or other people's experience to give to like, help us understand better how we can test and learn and validate to make sure we are on the right track?
Sure. It's a great question, Adrian. So yeah, I'll give you a personal example of what we during the crisis kind of understood for test and learn. One of the technologies or the tools that we use from a testing and learning perspective is we obviously in the crisis we don't know whether we are doing the right thing or are we making a mistake. But the best way to do one of the ways to go about it is the A/B test. So what we do is in I'll give you an example. We made a change to the checkout by reducing the number of steps for a customer who comes online and tries to order a product. We cut two steps for 50% of the people. Okay. And then for the remaining 50, we essentially kept the same number of user steps to see if we reduce the part to purchase versus if we keep the original part to purchase, are we gaining any traction, any mileage, improved conversions, or whatever KPIs and metrics that we were tracking. And we were actually surprised that for the people who reduced those two steps who we thought were important, we actually saw there was like almost three times increase in the number of conversions for the people for whom we actually reduced the steps. So that is what we mean. We did not, if we had implemented it, then we ramped up to 100%, but we made sure that you test what you're trying to do on a pilot population. If you see the results, measure the results, and at that point in time, once you satisfy the result, that when you ramp up and then implement the change that you want to do. So you test, you learn what the customer is saying, and then implement the change. Does that answer the question, Ravi and Adrian?
Yeah, let me wait to. Adrian said, "Great example. Thank you, Amrish." Amrish, I had a follow-up question. Operationally, are there any tools that you would ask people to consider first for A/B testing?
So basically, it depends on what kind of tools your organization has. For example, if you are having an Adobe suite, or if you're having, let's say, your own tech stack through which you're able to ramp up, ramp down the customers. In a credit card industry, for example, we kind of run the tool wherein we monitor the percentage to which we roll it out: 5%, 10%, 20%, like that. Or we can use real-time Google tools if you want. You can use Adobe tools. Those are some kind of tools that are already there in the market. It all depends on the tech stack that you already have in the organization.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Amrish. At this point, no more questions. So let's move on.
Good. So yeah, great questions. And then that brings up to essentially the core of today's discussion. What exactly? So we talked about the transformation. We talked about what we need to become to during the crisis. Now we are saying that how do we essentially become stronger during the crisis? Okay, and then I'll talk about uh, the 4 steps towards becoming stronger during the crisis. Yeah. The most important, these four, the Holy Grail essentially is: first, like I said, we need to understand what the customer behavior is, what the expectations are, because everybody is in the business, everybody has some customer. During the crisis, the customers change, the behavior changes, you onboard new set of customers which you never had, and then obviously they have a set of expectations that you never knew about. So that is what you need to understand at a very high level. What is understanding the customer behavior and the expectations. Then the next thing that we need to focus, and I'm going to go into details of all these fours during the subsequent slides. Okay? The second question essentially is about how do we leverage data, insights, and all that to essentially keep ourselves one step ahead of the competition. Because in this crisis, nobody knows what's going to happen, how do the question that was asked, how do we know whether we are right, how do we know whether we are wrong? In those kind of things, we need to kind of assess the kind of performance we are, what are the data, what can I get insights, can I get the offline behavior of the customer, can I get the online behavior of the customer, can I connect those dots, whether it is structured or unstructured, and then how do I prepare myself for the next set. So those are kind of the second pillar, which is essentially artificial intelligence, data insights, getting the IL, the ML, the programming languages that we're talking about. That's the second step. Then the third most important step is essentially what we've learned from wave one is some of them were ready with their technology, while some of them lost out because they did not have the right technology, or some of them were impacted because they were hit by hacking or cyber risk or were exposed to cyber risk. So obviously, it's very important for all these organizations to take that learning in this crisis and then invest in technology. So that's the third most pillar, important pillar. And then at the same time, while these organizations are trying to understand the customers, they're trying to gather the data about it, they're investing in technologies, internally within the organization, they have to focus on a very, very key important thing, which is the agility within the organization. They, like I said, you have to move at the speed of the crisis. So agility, and most of you obviously knowing you all are adept at this and are advocates of agility. So this is a very, very, very key important, and no one better than you all to understand that how we can upscale the organization to accelerate in this digital world. Now I'm going to go into the details of each one of them. Okay. So the first thing we talked about was understanding the customer behavior and the expectations. So what happened during this crisis? Okay. During this crisis, people panicked. Somebody, even regardless of the age, or you saw people who were even 70s and 80s coming onto online to do their shopping. That's a classic example, right? And those are the customers whose behavior you don't know how they're going to be navigating online. What are their expectations? What do they want to see online? So in those cases, and I'll illustrate with an example. Okay? We need to obviously make sure that we are prepared to give them the channel. We are prepared to give them that experience, which is kind of nimble, okay, fast, user friendly, and consistent, whether he's on the web, whether the user is on the mobile, whether he's through push notification, through an email. The consistency has to be there, or an app. And while you're doing that, while you're trying to understand, you obviously learn, you adapt, you implement. And what you're implementing is essentially all these new digital offerings. Classic example of that is buy online, and then you realize the person would like to go and pick up in store. All these are new digital offerings that you kind of keep evolving, learning, and implementing. So, so here's a classic example. Okay, uh, during the crisis, our organization was told quickly come up with a new e-commerce redesign because we're gonna have significant traffic. We're gonna have marketing wants to make it more friendly. Merchandising team wants to put all the content. Supply chain is geared up towards getting less and less inventory. So all these messages of what the business units are trying to convey had to be done as a part of the e-commerce setup. So we're quickly enough to kind of get in touch with all these stakeholders, understand what they're trying to do, understand, and then we come up with all these channels that you see on the left hand side, followed by what do we need? Okay, now we need to have better control and visibility over inventory. So that's a classic example of an e-com service. Like you see inventory management here. How do we manage the catalog? What products are we going to actually get during the crisis, and what are going to fall off during the factory itself? So you need to have catalogs for that. You need to have inventory management for that. You need to have the content and the messaging to say that this product, sorry, is no longer available because of in the current COVID crisis, the manufacturing is hit. And then for that, you need to obviously be integrated to say if the pricing is changed because of, let's say, the shortage, you need to have all those integration options. What is happening with my shipment? Is it 1 day delivery? Is it a 2 hour delivery? Is it a pickup in store? All those kind of integration options and shipping information needs to be available. And last but not the least, because they are all people who are new to digital channels, they obviously need to have those customer service tools, which where the customer where they're able to engage with the customer agent, give their point, talk about their point, and then go into details about what their complaints are, or if they're happy with the service, give the feedback. All these kind of things are the most important fundamental block of this four pillars or the four steps that I'm talking. Understanding the customer behavior. Okay. So now what we've done is we've created the experience. Now what? Are people actually going to come on the experience? Who's going to come? What are they going to do? Which pages are they going to see? How from where are they coming? What are they trying to do on my page? Are they going to come back on my page, or is it a first time user? Am I advocating my products correctly? Am I able to keep them happy? Are they happy? All this kind of information that we're looking at. Where does how do we get all this information? We get this by essentially focusing on two fundamental things. One is investment in data. Second is having the technologies like artificial intelligence and all that to essentially come up with these, making sense of the information or the data that you have. Because the data that you can have could be structured or it could be unstructured. So in this case, let's say when we set up the website, again going back, I'm relating every pillar to what I've done in real life. So in this case, we built in a website. People come to the website from different sources, so we need to have a discovery metrics. So we talk about who's coming, who's seeing the pages, where are they coming from, are we able to engage from mobile, are we able to engage web, are they coming through the app? Those are all the discovery part of it. And then some of them could be coming through email. Did they, how many clicked the email, how many did not click the email, what was the cost I had to incur to get the person onto the website and actually engage? Did they come through social media? All these kind of metrics. We kind of how many actually abandoned, how many came back, yeah? And then how many actually went through the purchase and then left at the last step. All these metrics are very, very, very important because, like the question that was asked, learn and test. uh, and then you keep learning from all this information you gather. You test it to the new, you test whatever new digital capability you create, and then you ultimately launch those capabilities. Okay? And of course, the most important thing is you obviously want to retain those customers because there is a associated lifetime value of a customer. And for those who are interested in understanding what is the lifetime, what are the metrics, I'll be happy to have an offline conversation uh, with anybody. And but last but not the least is the advocacy, or are the people happy or not with the promoter score? So we talked about the two steps so far. We talked about the customer experience. We talked about the importance of somebody who's come on the website, the knowing about the customer, gathering the data, what the offline behavior is, what the online behavior is, what kind of artificial intelligence tool do I make to predict who's going to come on the site, what product are they going to have, what affinities do they have, what categories do they like. Now comes, they've come onto the site. Are they going to be happy with it or not? Okay? For that, we need to obviously come to the third step, which is investing in technology. That is the third pillar. Okay? And the third pillar essentially talks about creating. So obviously, during the COVID, we had to obviously restructure and reallocate the funds to what is important, what is minimal viable product, what needs to be there to the end. So we need to have a very important and nimble cost structure to allocate. Everybody understood that, because the digital channels have opened up, every user has actually gone online or embraced digital technology in some form or the other. They are prone to cyber attacks. They are prone to risk. So you need to invest in technology that can make your environment secure and comfortable for the users to kind of feel confident about your engaging with your brand. Second thing that the users have to talk is, um, if you look at it, everybody wants to have the view of the data from whichever corner of the world they are in. So technologies such as cloud have become more and more important. So we need to invest in platforms for those who've not done so. They need to kind of invest into technologies which are like cloud-based platforms, data-based platforms, automating the software delivery so that you're able to roll out all these changes very quickly, while making sure that everybody who's there in your team is constantly updating their own technology skills and implementing those changes. And here I'll give you again, applying to the same context. We talked about e-commerce, we talked about creating a website, then we talked about gathering the data. Now, the third thing in that is, I said, invest in technology. So we obviously have to create technology stacks for these customers so that all the return on investment a company is doing. In this case, I'll give you an example. Let's say advertising dollars or the marketing dollars. How do I know which technologies to invest, where to invest, uh, where is the return on investment going to come? So you need to create a tech stack. So I'll give you a classic example for this is like a personalization. It's called personalization is essentially who, let's say I as a user go onto the site. I'm looking for a particular product. When I go across different sites, I'm able to see that particular product so that that impression is given to me to essentially convert me and engage with me as a customer and convert me as a buyer. Okay? So in this case, let's say I was buying a mobile phone. So obviously there is an information associated. There is a technology investment that needs to be done to make sure there's a content system which will kind of take care of all my content associated to a phone. Okay? Then now who is in the market to buy that phone? So there is a system which basically gathers, let's say Amresh as a user is trying to buy a phone. What is his offline behavior? Does he go to store? Does he go online? Which site is the customer going to go and buy? So you create a system which basically have technologies to essentially gather all these online, offline insights and understand the customer's behavior. Then you analyze, you collect all this data, not just for one user, you collect it for entire state, then country, then globe. You need to obviously having dashboards to kind of show this kind of information. And then what do you do with this information? Some of this could be structured, some of them could not be structured. So what happens if somebody is talking, if it's a conversational message I've picked up, can I still put it in my database? Of course you can. That's when tools like big data come in. They make sense of any information that is there and they'll ingest it and translate into a form that's understandable to a computer. Okay? So once now you know Amresh needs a phone, then you got gathered all the information about it. You know the segment, the age group, then you know where he's going. You've analyzed all that data. You know his preferences. At that point in time, now you and the organization has to engage with him. They can engage through an email. They can engage through a website, through advertisements. So that's where they create campaigns. So they need campaign management tools to invest into to create those, and then followed by they can engage with the customer online or through an app, through a store, through a purchase, through a point of sale, through a mobile, any of these channels that they want to. So those are the channels. And last but not the least, extrapolate this to the complete segment who is interested in buying that product. That's how you typically create a technology stack. You go all the way from content all the way till the and then whether it's through cookies, and then you have companies like LiveRamp and others which essentially try to connect the dots between and keep it anonymous in the age of privacy. Okay? So that is a classic example of investing in technologies, and most of the organizations are focused on all these martechs. Okay? Then the last, so now so far you've talked about three pillars. You talked about the experience, then you talked about the data to gather that. Now you made sense of the data. And last but not least, you created the technology to connect all the dots. Now what are you doing? You have all this information. How quickly can you implement these technologies? That's the last pillar or the last step that is needed in our conversation, which is essentially how nimble or how agile your organization is during these times. So that brings me to organization agility. It is basically the velocity at which the organization can move, whether the people are together co-located or are they remote. How, if they are remote, what work models do I need to do? How do I make them collaborate? How do I improve their productivity? That's what it is all about. How do I make sure that whether it is the Zoom of the world, or whether it is the Jira or the Confluence of the world, or whether it is a safe agile technologies, all these technologies are essentially needed to kind of bring together that agility inside the organization, collaborate, and then who. And the most important thing is, during the crisis, some jobs have become redundant, while some have actually taken a lot of importance. Let's say call center, people had to no longer come in the office; they had to kind of go remote. So how do we essentially upscale people to whether they have to log into through Citrix and all that? How do you upskill all the people to know what the new accelerated digital world is going to be like? So that's the fourth pillar. That's the organization agility. And I'll give you an example. Again, we'll talk about, like we talked about e-commerce. So in this case, agility is basically when you're trying to create a website, and if you want to create it in a fast, let's say, typically in the normal times you take 6 months. During the COVID times, you don't have the luxury of creating e-commerce site in 6 months, because by that time your competitors would have taken over the market. So you need to be agile, nimble. So you need to look at things like design thinking into the organization. So by using design thinking, you, even though you understand that you're getting both the technology teams, the design agencies, the creators, the content creators, all of them together to decide at that point in time, as opposed to being a cyclic process where one passes their information to the other to basically take it over. So that's a classic example of an organizational agility, giving the same example of e-commerce. And then what are we ultimately trying to get out of it? Whether they are in silos, or whether they are resisting the change, or whether they are unaligned with the process, you essentially have to focus on all these four drivers that I've listed here to make it more nimble. Yeah. First of them is organizational driver. You have to, the first step is essentially talking about reintegrating the organizations. Today, the organizations are operating in silos. We need to reintegrate the org. Okay. And then we have to understand which processes are dependent and which of them are not dependent. So we need to create that interdependence. Okay? Uh, and then the second lever is essentially the relational drivers. The relational drivers are having an honest dialogue, that decisioning that needs to happen inside the organization to kind of make that change, to bring that agility, because people are not very receptive to change sometimes. In that case, what is the organizational benefit? What's the individual benefit if we take a collective decision in the benefit of the organization? That's a relational driver. Yeah. The last two are essentially emotional and the cognitive drivers. These are talking about what decisions need to happen, what discussions do we need to have, what's the broader picture of the change, and at the same time, how do we connect that brand to the customer? And like the classic example of what Ravi has done to the organization, or most of them, or the leaders that you work, the key to all this agility is leading by example. The leader in the organization is very, very important to set the tone across the organization to make them move fast and be agile. At this time, I want to kind of take a quick pause to see if there are any questions, because we talked about all the four pillars in great detail with an example for an e-commerce during the COVID times. Let me know.
All right. So let me recap the four pillars, Amresh. So we've got understanding the customer. Yeah, perfect. Understanding customer behavior, leverage technology, invest in technology, organizational agility. So as you question for the listeners, as you try to digest this information and you start thinking about applying some of this to your company when you get back to work tomorrow, or if you're in the job search market, if a hiring manager, recruiter asks you, what did you learn? How will you apply? How will you go about digital transformation? What questions come to your mind? Which of these is most relevant for your context? Which is the biggest challenge? What questions?
Is
Amrish? Sorry, go ahead, Amrish.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so these are basically applicable for different groups in your different organizations. Some of them could be a design agency where the first one would be relevant. If you're in a data organization, then the second one would be relevant. If you are in a core platform based company where you're investing in technologies or DevOps, then you're investing in the third one. And fourth, if you are, let's say, an internal where you're responsible for moving the organization together as a leader, then the fourth one basically becomes relevant. So, based on whichever organization you are, these pillars, essentially, these steps have to be implemented to make you stronger during the crisis. You need to understand the customer, you need to have the technology to serve support, you need to have the insights, the data, and you need to do move very fast.
Yes, Amrish, I have a question, let's say as an agile coach, and maybe it cuts across multiple dimensions. So,
Mhm.
when we are, uh, you know, many times when we go to, actually, Amrish, the previous slide was perfect, the summary slide. Um, so
Okay.
I've been in companies which uh, sometimes I've been in companies who are the undisputed leaders in their area, or who have been the undisputed leaders, like the juggernauts. Now, what happens is I have sadly been part of companies where sometimes they are at the peak of their power, but it's like there is a crack in the iceberg, or it's like the Titanic, it's heading towards that iceberg. And some people can see the iceberg, but the people in power are so intoxicated with their dominance, they feel that they are invincible. Or sometimes I've been in companies where actually the ship has hit the iceberg and it's actually sinking. But the people again are so intoxicated about that with their dominance, which has lasted for so many years, they feel this too shall pass. We are invincible. And where I have struggled is maybe number one. So when the customer is moving away, let's say I'm in Blockbuster and people are now starting to move away to Netflix. But if I'm a powerful executive in Blockbuster, uh, it's hard to convince me using data that you've hit the iceberg. You're on the Titanic, you've hit the iceberg. So do you have examples or suggestions of how to influence people who are in positions of power and tell them, hey, COVID has hit, customer behavior is changing. We need to invest more time in understanding customer behavior than we used to in the past. How do you make it just hit them in the face?
All right. Great questions. And we've already seen this happen in COVID. So many companies who we never thought can basically file for bankruptcy have gone bankrupt, right? So so if you take any retail industries, I mean, these are stores which have like 500, 600 stores around the world, around the country itself, right? And they thought they were invincible. And when this and they did not adapt very quickly between a consumer who goes offline and buys foot traffic in their store versus people who are now quickly moving on to other digital channels and buying their products at a better rate and their competitor products online, right? So these people, if I have to take that example, the second point, that is leverage AI and data insights. So to these people, to the executive, or if you have to take your Blockbuster and Netflix example as well, to these people, you go to them with the data saying that your your revenue last quarter, okay, before the crisis, let's say, or last year, was same time was X amount of dollars. Now look at year on year, if you compare what happened during the wave one of pandemic, if they were not prepared or they did not, they've hit the iceberg, but they don't realize that they've hit the iceberg, they would have seen a sudden drop in sales. It could be because of the foot traffic inside the store. Let's say, let's take an example of JCPenney, or people going inside a Blockbuster store. Let's say if it was still there during COVID, right? You go back to them, do a year on year comparison and tell them, listen, this is the data that it was last year. Look at the sales numbers this year. And then this is not a temporary glitch or anything like that. This around the world, if you extrapolate and you see the number of impacted organizations at the same level, you essentially, that data will give them the picture that they've hit the iceberg, and the only way for them is they're going to sink. Hmm? So I
Got it.
think data there is the key.
Yeah, and Amresh, a follow-up question, maybe more tactical. Are there any tools? What would you recommend? So sometimes your financial data is in NetSuite. Maybe your customer access or acquisition, I wouldn't say acquisition data, maybe, I don't know, is an email, some marketing campaign tracker,
Yeah,
and website data is in Google Analytics.
yeah.
Uh, do you have advice on what tools people can use to suck data from different systems of truth, put it in a central tool? Is it Tableau, and then visualize it and then show it to the executives such that boom, it makes such a powerful impact that they cannot argue with it anymore?
Correct. So that's a very good follow-up question. If you see the third point, which is investing in technologies, that's what it is. Shifting that cost structure, and then essentially investing in tools that will give you a 360 degrees view of the customers. So they are tools like C360. What the C360 tools and all these companies essentially do is they digest information from every source possible, whether it is finance, whether it is sales, whether it is marketing, whether it is a promotion, or whether it is a touch point or a recurring. Everything that you need to know comes into one master database, like a 360-degree view, okay, of the organization. And from those 360-degree tools like C360 and all those kind of tools, you can essentially integrate those to Tableau or any reporting dashboard. This reporting dashboard, and then you can basically segment and have all those drop downs which will focus on what you need to do to essentially, oh, I want to see the drop down, what was the year on year performance, from how many customers came and what was the sales. So now you're talking about customer acquisition from one end, and at the same time you're talking about uh, uh, sales from sales and marketing team. So so tools like C3C and all that will give you like a consolidated shop stop for all the insights that an executive needs to have from a dashboard and a reporting perspective. Does that answer your question, Ravi?
Yes.
You basically,
Typically, how much does it cost, or what is the barrier to configuring this?
uh, it depends actually. It depends on the kind of, at what scale you are implementing. If you're implementing at a scale, or let's say the Samsung example that I can give you, it's going to cost you, it's going to run on year, it's going to cost you a few $1 million to just get all these datas. So I don't know if they are nimble, ready to use technologies which at an organizational level that you can deploy. I think you're talking about, can a uh, open source technology tool be implemented where you can, which can suck in the data from all sources and then give a quick reporting or a dashboard. Is that what?
Yeah, my challenge, Amrish, is it's almost like a catch-22.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if I'm struggling to get the executive's attention, executive will say, okay, show me the data. And if
Yeah,
I say, okay, but for data, you need to give me some budget. And it's like, I won't give you budget till you give me data. And
got
it's
it.
like, I can't give you data if you don't give me budget. So I was just wondering, for a quick and dirty a prototype to make them aware, uh, how much would it cost? But you
But
gave me what I needed. C360. That is a good place to start.
yeah,
And
but I
yeah,
can also do a little bit of research to find out which is more nimble. It's a chicken and egg situation, to see how to essentially get that information. And maybe there's a huge market opportunity. Who knows? Right?
okay, very good. All right,
Yeah.
Amrit, thank you so much. At this point, Adrian has another question. In terms of these 4 steps, it can be hard to make an impact on a change averse organization. Do you have advice on how we can influence change from the bottom up as individual contributors?
Yeah. So at the beginning of the slide, I talked about digital culture, right? One of the most important things about digital transformation. So if in your organization you feel it in, and that's a very good question and very relevant in many industries. I've seen it personally in some of the teams that I have worked with too. So in those cases, what you need to do is, if you're seeing that the cultural changes are not happening top down, the best way to go up, and that's where the product managers essentially play a very, very important role, a bottom up change that you need to do. That means you come up with something called the return of investment or cost benefit analysis, to say that uh, we need to implement this tool technologies now during this crisis. And this, if we don't do this, this is the loss. And if we do this, this is essentially the kind of change or the revenue that we're going to look at. So that is one way of impacting or from a number perspective. The second thing is to actually coach them. So to coach organization to be to digitally transform is itself a very large undertaking in every organization. That cultural shift happens in partnership with all the stakeholders. It's not like one man can do it alone. And in fact, I don't even recommend anybody do it alone. Basically partner with all the stakeholders, and then if you can give that cost benefit analysis and advocate to each one of them and show them what it means to their organization. It's like if you don't invest, I think there's a very classic saying, if you invest and they leave, what happens if you don't invest and they stay, right? So if that picture, if you're able to go and tell the stakeholders with whom you want to bring about that cultural change to put across your idea, I think that's what they need to realize. Hopefully that answers the question.
Very good. All right, Amrish, thank you. We are getting close to the end of our time, so maybe just like 3 to 4 minutes left.
Yeah, I'm anyway at the last slide as well. So we talked about digital transformation. We talked about how to apply digital transformation. Then we talked about what are the four pillars that we need to focus on to emerge stronger about it. Now we managed the crisis using all the four steps that we talked about. Now, are we ready for the next crisis? Okay, because now we're living in this new normal and we don't know. Earlier, catastrophes used to strike once in a decade. Now they hit every 4 years, 5 years, right? So, are we ready in the future? So, the last thing I want to talk about, which is what will actually help us not only take the crisis by the horn, we need to also be able to defend ourselves and be strong enough to be prepared for the next crisis. So there are three things I want to kind of talk about to be in conclusion, which is essentially now that you've gone through, you've taken the four steps, you walk through the crisis. How do you make yourself bulletproof? You kind of stabilize the short-term emergency measures. That's one thing, which is because in crisis you must, every organization takes so many drastic measures. Let's say I want to partner with Grabhub, I want to talk with all the supply chain is a classic example. They had to all resort to immediate emergency measures during COVID to essentially do the fulfillment. Now they need to stabilize and make sure that whatever they did that in the short term, they're able to actually keep it working at in the ecosystem as well. Okay. Then the next one is essentially talking about scaling down the interim based on the situation. This is, like I said, again, going with the same apply, we created the e-commerce site, we partnered, we got all the data, we were able to sell all the products. Now during the crisis, we were able to make a short-term emergency supply chain where we were able to distribute through foot traffic, through pickup stores and all those kind of things. Now we need to kind of all these have put a cost pressures on all the CIOs. So they kind of need to come up with where are they investing the cost unproportionately during the crisis, and they need to basically say where they need to kind of uh, continue investing, where they need to cut costs, what is the short term, what is the long term, what needs to be, what is getting the return on investment. And the same thing, while they're scaling down, they obviously must have taken short-term measures to even hire workforce for, let's say, a digital channel to calculate the demand, whereas they let off somebody in store. So they have to redeploy all that workforces to for their future. That's the second most important thing that they need to do to emerge stronger out of and be prepared for the next crisis. So they stabilize their investments, then they create cut costs wherever they need to, whichever is not yielding. And then last but not the least, what are the key areas that are emerging? Do I need to have a global view of, let's say, if I'm making a mobile, do I need to know exactly where the lens, my tier one, tier two, tier three, everybody in the supply chain needs to have the visibility. Do I need everybody on the cloud? Do I need to create new technologies? Do I need to engage with customer? I need to engage with suppliers. Do I need to not just focus on value supply chain, and maybe I need to focus on the value chain? What are these? Is value chain the future of supply chain? How do I prioritize what is important for me, what is not? What projects do I keep? What do I cut? What do I defer to next year? These are some of the most important decisions that during the crisis, now that you've handled the crisis, you need to keep the organization ready, so that once you're able to keep all these crisis metrics, as I like to say, ready, that's when they are better prepared to come out. And no matter what pandemic hits next, the organization would be stable and not go under the water. Of course, we don't know what the next pandemic is going to be, but at least we'll be better prepared as an organization, and better be able to take care of the tools, technologies, and most importantly, the people. So that for me is essentially what I wanted to talk about. And I leave you with the message that, if you build it right, you will be prepared for the next phase. And then I would want to wish everybody a very, very safe. And with that, Ravi, I'll hand it over to you for Q&A and conclusions.
All right. Thank you so much, Amresh. This was a power-packed session. We learned about what is digital transformation, what are the 5 pillars, how has COVID impacted the business, what are the two values, being bold and being curious, I would say. What are the 2 values that we need to respond? Then we learned about the 4 pillars and the 3 steps to emerge stronger. So a jam-packed session. It's almost like a playbook of digital transformation. We might have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. Last chance for people. What questions do you have? While we are waiting, Amresh, if someone wanted to get some time with you or ask some follow-up questions, what might be the best way?
Sure, they can in the deck. I would encourage them to connect, uh, and then I can share my LinkedIn profile as well. Ravi, you have. I can send my contact details as well as my email address, which is my first name, last name at gmail.com.
Okay. Perfect.
So,
Perfect. Good.
so
So
that's the
Adrian
best
is
way to get
saying,
in touch.
perfect. Adrian is saying his biggest takeaway is being bold and learning at all levels of the organization. Very good. All right.
Yeah,
Amresh, thank
that's
you so
very
much for, sorry, go ahead, Amresh.
It's a great point. Yeah, we have to all be bold. We need to learn from this crisis, adapt, and improve.
Yeah. And I think if we are bold and if we are curious, the rest of the things will fall in place, because all we have to do is, if we are curious, we have to type in the right search term in Google, and I'm sure we'll find something. But if we are not bold, we won't dream big. And if we are not curious, we won't ask big. So we got to do both. All right. We won't learn big. All right. Amresh, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. To all our attendees, thank you for listening. Thank you for your participation. Again, if you have questions, contact Amresh on LinkedIn. And I hope to see you at our next Agile DevOps DFW session. Thank you. Keep calm and scrum on.
Yeah, pleasure talking to you all.
Thank you.